my goodness, friends, everybody's freaking out over this NAR settlement lawsuit stuff. I'm seeing it in all the real estate Facebook groups that I'm in. I mean, people are getting mad, like angry about this. And there's so much like misinformation floating out there and all this like craziness that I said, you know what? This weekend I took 7 hours. I took like literally 7, 8 hours and I went through the entire National Association of Realtor website. I went straight to the source and I picked out the most important pieces that you need to know or that we need to know as real estate agents for our business. Okay? And just kind of sifted through all the crap to get to the facts. This video, we are going to break down the top 10 questions, 5 most important questions that your buyers are going to ask, 5 most important questions that your sellers are going to ask. We're going to talk about that. And I'm going to give you responses on how I would best respond. Okay, so we're just going to crush it on these questions. You're going to learn about the facts of the settlement that you need to know. Okay, there's so much misinformation floating around out there that it's getting kind of nuts, right? So let's break it all down. We're going to simplify it, keep it simple, sweet, to the point. Honestly, the whole settlement, the whole lawsuit, I mean, it's not that bad. None of us like change, right? None of us. Okay, so I think that's the biggest part that we all kind of freak out about, is that our normal everyday routine changes up a little bit. But change is inevitable. It's going to happen. All right. So that's just part of the process. That's okay, because we're going to break it all down. I'm sharing with you what took me 7 hours to figure out. Hopefully I can sum this up for you in about 10, 15 minutes. That's sort of the goal. So let's go ahead and get rocking and rolling in it. Of course, I'm going to share my screen so that you have something to look at while I am chatting through this. And, by all means, if you have any other insight as to what I'm going to share, definitely leave it in the comments. If you're already excited to learn about these 5 questions that your buyers and sellers are going to ask, hit the like button, show the love, hit the subscribe. Let's just be great friends. All right, so I am going to walk through this cute little awesome workbook that I've put together, but I've kind of made it bigger for presentation size. Now, if you want a copy of this workbook with some other really cool stuff all about the NAR lawsuit, I've also put that together for you. It's over in my Etsy shop. I'll leave a link to this below. Super good stuff right here. All right. This is a copy of the workbook that you can get. You can print it however you want to do. There's some note pages in there. These are the objection busters that we are going to talk about today. So we're going to answer the questions for buyers and sellers. But also included in this awesome communication kit that you get is a NAR lawsuit little guide that you can easily add your own branding in Canva, send it as an email, boom, done. You've done your part. You've shown up for your clients, for your leads, and you've, kind of addressed the elephant in the room, right? You're talking about it as that expert. You're going to get some social media posts. I think there's like 20 here that talks all about the lawsuit, with a done for you reel. That's done. Oh, bonus template. This is super cool. This is super fun. So my agents that you represent buyers a lot, when you're going on your tours, this is one thing that you can do moving forward that has to do with the lawsuit, in which we'll talk about in just a minute. But that is this seller paid concessions. You create this cool little flyer for them, right? Give them the details of what the house, has, right? But down here, put some financial information. Go ahead and plug in seller paid concessions. Okay. That's important. That can help your buyer client. And I'm going to tell you exactly how you can use this. Listing agents. This is really, really, really big. I've been doing this on my listings and it works flawlessly. Okay. It clears up any of that confusion, kind of sums up that gray area. But basically, you get 3 templates here, but this is what I've done. Okay. It's a thank you text. As soon as I have a selling agent request to show one of my listings and I hit approve, they get this text for whatever property it is, right? It's a little picture of the house. It's a thank you for showing. I tell them a little bit about the house, maybe some showing notes that they might need to know about where the lockbox is. Most important though, original list price, current list price, seller paid broker fees. Put it in there. Clears up that confusion. They know before they show the house that, that portion is paid for them. And then they can also go over here and add it into their little flyer, right? So it's all really cool. All really cool stuff right there. So that whole packet's put together for you, $12 if you want to grab that. I will leave the link below. But let's go ahead and start answering these questions. So I'm not going to go through every single page of this guide. We're just going to skip right to seller and buyer questions. Okay. Number one question from a seller. Here we go. With the new settlement, am I no longer responsible for paying buyer broker commission? I've already gotten questions about this. Okay. So if you haven't gotten a question about this or something similar to this, it's coming. So don't even worry. All right. You will get your turn. This is how I respond. Mr. Seller, this is a two-part question that deserves a two-part answer. First, one of the biggest misconceptions about the settlement in the media is that the commissions were never negotiable. Commissions have always been negotiable between all parties in any real estate transaction. For example, you've got discount brokers, right? So discount brokers have been around for many, many years. All right. And still to this day, 10% of customers decide to sell their home for sale by owner to really just avoid paying broker fees. Let's just be honest. That's the only reason why somebody sells for sale by owner. Okay. With that being said, you still have the option to pay the buyer broker. The only difference is the amount you agree to pay will not be communicated through the MLS. Instead, it will be promoted on non-MLS platforms, which is where that little text that we send to the showing agent, that can be there. I can publish it on my website. And I think I'm working on that. We're working on that on the back end, but for listings and that kind of thing. So that is that. Now I'm going to go ahead and make another really big point right here. Okay. On the MLS, you can 100% communicate seller paid, concessions. Actually, we might talk about this in just a second. Yeah, I think we do. Okay, so let me just not even add additional stuff right there. Okay. If we don't cover it here in just a sec, I will bring it up. Okay. So question number 2. Well, why should I pay the buyer to have representation? Right? So that buyer's agent does not represent the seller. So why do I as a seller want to pay for the representation? Like, what sense does that make? This is my response. This is your response. Historically, in all real estate transactions, the buyer holds the most costs associated with the closing of real estate transaction. Associated with the closing of real estate, right? Offering to pay their broker commission on the front end is helpful for them to consider your home when calculating the costs of closing and ironing out the financial details with their lender. Okay. So kind of like this little flyer thing right here, right? So let's say you're a listing agent and your selling agent who's showing the home, he's given his buyer the sheet. Okay. And on their little home tour kind of deal that they're doing for the day, you've got your listing over here doing this. You've got this listing and this listing, right? But down here, this seller is only paying X amount. That seller's only paying X amount, etc. Okay. That is sort of where when they start looking at the financials or kind of can see the financials for that particular property, this is where offering a buyer's co-op is very helpful. All right. Here's another one. What if I decide not to pay for the buyer's broker? This is how I would respond. Okay. And I actually just had this question on my last listing presentation that I just went on like a week and a half ago. Okay. This is how I responded. I want to be fully transparent with you on this. Not offering to pay the buyer's broker commission may be a competitive disadvantage to you, and here is why. with closing costs, down payment costs, etc. Adding in broker representation may price them out of being able to move forward with an offer or successful contract and closing of your home. Considering all of this, when you are ready to purchase, my fee for you as for your buyer services could also be negotiated to be paid by the seller of the home you choose to purchase. So essentially it's this. If we don't offer to pay for the buyer's representation, they essentially might not can afford to buy our house, okay, with calculating everything that goes in with that. Now, this is very, very important. All right. So if you don't hear anything of this part, listen to this. On number 50 of the NAR questions and answers is published on their website, a listing broker must not tell a seller that a broker will steer buyers based off the amount the broker is compensated. We as agents know that that happens. It's happening. It'll always happen. But we cannot inform our seller clients of this. Okay, we can't talk about that. All right, we can't say, well, Bob, if you don't, offer a buyer's broker, simply put, agents just aren't going to come show your house. You can't say that. Okay, and if you're caught doing that, you can get in a lot of trouble. So don't do that. Okay, there's ways around this stuff where you don't have to get in trouble and you don't have to be all crazy. Okay. So let me see if I can zoom in on this a little bit. Okay, yeah, I can. Cool. Okay. Why do I care if the buyer has an agent or not? How does this benefit me? Right? So I'm a seller and why does it benefit me if Sue, real estate agent Sue, brings Bob as the buyer, or if Bob just comes off of Zillow with no agent representation? Okay. I don't know if you've ever had the experience of working a transaction where the buyer side was not represented, but I'm going to tell you now, it is no fun, especially as a listing agent, because you are fully dependent upon that buyer getting documents to the lender on time, right? Making sure that they sign all the documents that the closing attorney needs. Making sure that they don't go super crazy when it comes to their inspection and wanting everything in the inspection done along with appraisal, right? So kind of hurdling through that appraisal. And then of course you've got the buyers towards the end. Sometimes they start getting the cold feet syndrome, start kind of rethinking things. I don't know. That selling agent is going to navigate that whole thing for the buyer side. Okay. This is huge for a seller. The seller needs that buyer's agent to keep that buyer in line through the entire process. Look, at the end of the day, without a buyer being represented correctly, there is no closing. It doesn't matter if the seller has just offering like this super awesome discount or buyer's broker co-op or any of that. None of that matters if there's no buyers to come buy the house. Okay, that's kind of a side note, but I don't know. A lot of agents right now, I'm seeing it in the groups, and they're like, "Oh, well, don't work with buyers. You need sellers." Well, I mean, no, not really, because without buyers, you can have listings and you have to invest all this money in marketing and all the things to get the listing there. But if there's no buyers coming to look at it, well, that's not really a benefit either. So it's a world that we live in as listing agents and buyers agents that we navigate together. Okay. It's not a one side. It's, we all feel it. Okay. Anyway, side note. So this is how I would respond. Mr. Seller, the buyer's agent is going to play a huge role in the successful closing of your home. It is to their benefit to close on the property just like it is ours, right? That selling agent wants to get to closing. They want that buyer to get to close. The agent who is representing the buyer is responsible for ensuring that the buyer has all the documents promptly submitted to the lender and the attorney. They will also help their client by advising them of fair market offers, right? So putting the actual first offer in. Well, most selling agents do, but in any case, they also are familiar with negotiations during the inspection. So they're not going to sit here and go through, in most cases, ask for everything on the inspection report to be done. And they kind of know how to navigate through the appraisal. And for you, Mr. Seller, this ensures that each phase of the buyer's side of the selling process is being handled by an expert and is backed with that expertise if any roadblocks come up during the sales process, including the cold feet syndrome. Okay. That selling agent, that's their job. Keep that buyer in line. If that buyer commits in a contract and then once they are past that due diligence, they're on the hook, period. Okay. So that is, that then should answer the question to the seller, why do I care if the buyer has an agent? You definitely better care. Okay. Because it's important. Seller question, what is a fair price to offer the buyer's broker? This is how I'm going to respond and how I have been responding and pretty much how I've always done my business when it comes to talking about commission splits and that kind of thing. I look at it like a comp, really. I mean, I look at other listings in the market and those sellers are offering, this one's offering this one's offering this one's offering that. We can do an average. You can take the latter, you could take the less. It doesn't matter. But this is kind of just laying it out there for you. Or you can always have that price talk with them and just kind of say, Bob, what is that bottom line number? What do you need to walk away from closing with? Well, what is that number? Right. And, whatever that number is minus what he owes on the mortgage, if there is a mortgage, you can calculate and figure it out accordingly as to making sure you have a little bit of room in there for inspection, a little bit for closing costs. And then, of course, for the buyers and the listing agent commission, right? Okay, let's go to the next one. Oh, actually, that was it for sellers. So we didn't talk about it. It might be a little bit later in the guide. I know I put it in here somewhere. I apologize. But in any case, really quick, to a point that I wanted to make. Okay. I don't remember which question it was, but when we were talking about you can't put the commission in the MLS, right? It has to be communicated off MLS. Right here was the first question. What you can put in the MLS, this is per NAR laws and whatever rules, new rules, right? What you can put in the MLS is any seller paid concessions. So anything that the seller says, you know what? Melissa, I'm going to offer $5,000 in closing costs for whoever brings me an offer. Okay. You can talk about that. You can put that in the MLS. My suggestion and how I plan to do that, I feel that's what the seller's willing to pay in closing costs and like off the price and all these other kind of things. I feel that's a negotiation. Okay. And so for me personally, if my seller tells me, well, I've got $5,000 to play with, I'm not going to put all my cards out on the MLS, right? I'm going to negotiate that for my seller. I'm going to say, okay, cool. You got $5,000. I'm going to try to get it done for $1,000. During that negotiation, worst case scenario, if we end up at the 5, then that's where we're at. Okay. So why it's part of the MLS, why it's okay to talk about the seller concessions, I'm not 100% sure because I feel like that should be discussion for negotiations. You just definitely cannot talk commission. Can't talk commission on the MLS. They don't want any part of that. They just paid the bill for that. So they don't want to talk about that. So now let's flip to the buyer side. The buyer side questions. Okay. I'm ready to buy, but with the settlement news, what does this mean for me? Okay, this is how I'd respond. Since the settlement, you as the buyer and myself as an MLS agent are now required to enter into a buyer's agreement. This is very similar to a listing agreement. The buyer's agreement will have the dates of the agency relationship between us and our pre-negotiated buyer-broker commission amount that you agree is fair to pay for representation. Okay, or that they agree to pay and that you agree to accept as a selling agent, right? So here's the thing. Some states, this has always been a requirement. I know because I'm licensed in Georgia and Louisiana. Georgia, it's common that we use a buyer brokerage agreement. Louisiana, I don't even know if they have one put together, right? But it's definitely not a requirement. Georgia's not a requirement, hasn't been a requirement for many years, but I've just kind of somewhat gotten into the practice of using it, especially if I was working with a buyer that I didn't personally know. Now, if I knew them and they were a referral, I never got it signed. I just waited until they were ready to put an offer in on something, and then I'd get them to sign it then. Well, now we can't do that, right? So now we have to have that signed agreement up front before we invest any time, energy, gas, money, efforts, any of the things. I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing. Okay. If you're wanting Mr. Buyer, all right, so let's just say Bob the buyer is wanting me to go and pull properties for sale, take up 5 hours in my Saturday to go show him 7 or 8 homes. I need to know that Bob and I are in an agreement that if I'm investing this time, energy, effort for him, that on the back end, once he finds something, he's agreeing to work with me and that I'm going to be compensated. There's nothing wrong with that. Look, you're not going to go to an attorney and ask for their service without signing something, right? You're not going to go to a doctor's office and get your teeth worked on without a bill or an agreement to pay. Right? Because you know how when you check out at the doctor's office, you were stopping by the desk before you hit that door, right? That's just standard business. This is standard business for us. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I really, really don't. All right. So now let's talk about another question. All right, that a buyer would ask. So that means that I now have to pay for your services to represent me. This is how I would respond. The agreement outlines what you agree to pay for my services. However, in many cases, the seller will agree to pay this fee for you on your behalf. And that's facts. I mean, that's the truth. Most sellers are going to continue to pay buyers, brokers, commissions, especially if they are represented by a good listing agent that can really explain the benefits of them paying a buyer's broker, right? Now, Bob buyer, if the seller does not agree to pay the broker fee in our offer, and you decide to proceed with the property and contract on that particular home, then you would be responsible for paying the fee at closing. Period. If Bob really wants that house on Smith Street and the owner of Smith Street is not willing to pay a buyer's broker, then he's going to pay for the service. Period. There's no, it's just is what it is. Now, here's the other thing. If Bob only has a certain amount, a budget, right? And let's say that I'm going to show him a house on 342 Elm Street, right? 342 Elm Street. I'm showing him a house on 342 Elm Street. I call the listing agent. Listing agent doesn't answer the phone. I have no idea if 324 Elm Street is paying a commission or not. I go to fill out my little flyer form, right? My little printout. And I give that to Bob, and there's nothing filled in on the seller concession because I haven't heard from the listing agent. Well, we go ahead and still see the house. I'm not going to not show him the house. You legally cannot do that. Okay. You show the property regardless. Now, when it comes to the offer process, of putting that, that offer in under, terms and conditions, however your state contract's written out, right? There's usually a space towards the end of the contract where you can add extra stuff. That's where you're going to put your compensation in. So whatever you and Bob agreed on to be paid, whether that's 2.5%, 3%, $5,000 flat, $7,000 flat, whatever it is that you agreed on, you're going to put that total amount, your agreement amount, in the offer. Okay. Along with whatever closing costs Bob needs, along with the sales price that you're trying to get it at, all the things. It's an offer. Worst case scenario, if that seller does not accept that offer and lines through that and maybe counters back and said, well, we're not going to pay you 3%, we'll pay you 2%. But my agreement with Bob is at 3%. All right, Bob, well, this is up to you. You've agreed to pay me 3%. Seller's willing to front you 2% of that fee. You would have to come to close with the other 1%. Does your budget allow for that? Nope. Bob says, nope, my budget doesn't allow for that. Okay, well then it's up to you. We can terminate this, terminate the offer. At this point, it wouldn't be an accepted offer because it's been countered, right? So, Bob could say, nope, doesn't fit in my budget. Let's move on. And then we move on and tell the seller thank you, no thank you, and move on to another one. There's no difference as if a buyer, and I'm spending time on this because it's important, but this is no different than a buyer. And I've had this happen several times. A buyer putting an offer in on a house, right? And we get in that house under contract, right? We're in due diligence. Well, as soon as we're in due diligence for my buyers, I always have the lender go ahead and run a preliminary down payment, cash to close. Well, I have the lender run the cash to close estimate along with the good faith estimate that shows the monthly payment. And I send that to my buyers during due diligence every time without fail. The reason I do this is I need to make sure my buyers understand these numbers and that they're comfortable with them. Okay. I try to do this before we contract, just to save time, energy, effort, paperwork, all the things. But in any case, worst case scenario, I do it during due diligence. I've had it happen several times where a buyer said, I can't afford that. The taxes were too high for that area. The HOA was too high for the property. They couldn't afford the payment. They didn't have that much cash to bring to close. And we backed out during our due diligence and we moved on. It happens. Okay. Can it happen if they can't afford to pay us our fee? Sure. Right. That's a service that they've agreed to. And, that's just part of the business. No different than going to the dentist, right? No different than going to the attorney's office, or hiring a skilled trade person to come put the HVAC system in your house versus you doing it by yourself on YouTube. Okay. Or going to YouTube University and figuring it out yourself versus just hiring somebody that's licensed that knows what the hell they're doing. Right. So, no difference there. Okay. All right, let's go to the next one. What if I can't afford it? Bob says, like, what if I just can't afford to pay you this 3%, Melissa, and the house I want, the seller can't pay for it and all the things. This is how I'd respond. My goal is for you to enjoy the buying experience and not add any pressure, confusion, or financial strain. Of course not, right? As you know, the first step in the home buying process is speaking with your lender. Once you have done this and we know the sales price that works for you and your budget, we will begin your home search journey. I offer an additional service for my clients when we meet for a home tour. This added service is a home tour detail sheet, which is the sheet that I showed you over here, right? For every home that we tour. The price sheet will display the estimated taxes, insurance, HOA, as well as any concessions that the seller is offering. This way, as we tour the home, you have a clear idea of the financials for that particular property to ensure that you are most comfortable. All right. So, but let's say that I called Sue on 123 Smith Street about her listing, but she hasn't called me back. And I have no idea what that seller might be offering in concessions or if they're offering anything. Right. Well, then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave that part blank down here at the bottom. And if Bob says, well, why isn't there anything filled out here? Well, I haven't gotten a hold of Sue yet. So I don't know if the seller is offering to pay anything. So you need to keep that in mind as we're, moving through this tour today, right? But you still show them the house. Definitely show them the house. You cannot not show them. Okay. And that's just bad business altogether, I believe. Don't worry about you. Take care of your client on the front end. Do what they want to do, protect them, make them happy. Your money is going to come on the back end, especially with the agreement, right? So you really don't have anything to worry about. All right. Couldn't I get a better deal working with a listing agent? Okay. This is how I would respond. If I get some random call from Joe from a lead that was an online lead that called and he's like, well, I need to buy a house and I'm moving to the area. Okay, cool, Joe. What kind of price point are you at? Well, I'm at about 250,000. Okay, Joe. Well, I definitely love to show you some houses. Let's get you in contact with the lender and all the things. Okay, I found one. I want to go look at it. Okay, awesome. My fee, we have to enter into an agreement for me to be able to unlock that door for you legally. Okay. And we have to agree to compensation. Now, my standard fee for this price point is a flat $7,000. I don't know, whatever, right? Oh, well, I'll just call Sue. She's the listing agent, and I'll probably just get a better deal and won't have to pay that $7,000. Okay, this is how I'm going to respond. Buying a home is one of the largest purchases in your life. It's an investment. As a selling agent, my job is to find you a home that you will love at the best value and negotiate for the best terms in your favor. The listing agent must represent their seller client in this same way. And while dual agency is allowed in some states, you need to know what your state laws are, okay? This can make the transaction tough to ensure that the agent is able to stay loyal to both parties through the negotiations of your contract. Period. You want to call Sue? Cool, call Sue. She's going to treat you as a customer because she's already in a contract to treat her seller as a client, unless unless they can do the dual agency thing, right? At the end of the day, if Joe is worried about paying me and doesn't see the value that I provide, then sometimes you just can't, you just have to let it go, right? I mean, move on. It's, he'll figure it out down the road, right? Okay, last one. What is your fee as an agent? Okay, so here's the deal. Couple things here, real important things that were pulled from the National Association of Realtors that I've seen a lot of confusion floating around about this, and I've seen agents kind of not put the right stuff here, so it's real important. You want to share a copy of your services with them, let them know the value and that why you're the right choice for them, right? Decide if you want to charge a percent, a flat rate, or how you want to do that. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you now, I think I'm definitely going to offer a discount for my dual-sided transactions. So my sellers that need to sell, but then also buy, on the buy side, I'm going to give them a discount. I just am. All right. They're going to I'm most likely keep my listing fees at 3%. Okay. Because I do hefty marketing. It's expensive, right? So I'll keep my listing fee at 3%. And then on the buy side, I might do 2% or something like that and give them a deal. All right. But I also thought about just my one-time clients that just need to buy right now, maybe like a tier fee. I don't know, maybe clients that are at 250,000 or lower, maybe do a flat rate of like $6,000 because odds are, they need a little bit more help. It's probably going to be their first home, all the things. My middle range clients, maybe 2.5 and so on, and sort of do it like that. Or on my listing, actually on my real estate website, let me show you this really quick because this might give you some ideas. On my real estate website, I actually have listing packages listed here. So let me show you what that looks like. This might help you. Give me a like if you're finding this helpful and you're still hanging with me. Definitely do that, please. I would greatly appreciate it. Okay, so cool. So here's what my real estate website looks like, okay? And this is how I have my packages set up. So you could see that I've got, $0 for them just to contact me, right? And then if they click on the little eye, the little pop-up pops up, talks about what all they get, all the things. So if they want to pay the 5%, which is 2.5 to my side, 2.5 to the buyer side, which this needs to be updated. I need to go ahead and update that probably today. But in any case, they get, additional things, professional photography, drone footage, Facebook ads, all the things, it costs more money, right? Doesn't necessarily mean I'm netting any different. I just know how to make these things happen and get it done for them, right? So in any case, that's that. Side note. All right, so let's talk about the really important stuff. Number 71 reads in the FAQs on the National Association of Realtors website reads, a written buyer agreement cannot have a commission that is buyer broker compensation shall be whatever XYZ. Okay. The agreement has to clearly say what it is you're going to make. Okay. You got to go ahead and figure that out now. Figure out what you're going to charge, how you're going to charge it, and to who. Okay. And so, but it can't say, well, a buyer agrees to buy buyer and buyer's broker agree to receive compensation of whatever the seller's offering. Can't be that. And it can't be a range. It can't be, well, they could pay me between 1% and 3%. It can't be any of that. Okay. It's got to be a flat rate, what it is. Everybody needs to understand what they're paying before they go look at a house, or even virtual tours are included in that as well. So it's not even just unlocking a door for them. It's going and doing a virtual and then sending that to them. You need a signed agreement for that. Okay. Number 38, the buyer's broker cannot receive compensation for broker services from any source that exceeds the amount or rate agreed upon in the agreement with the buyer. Very important. If you agree to a certain rate, say you agree to $7,000 flat rate, and that's your charge, but the seller is offering an additional $5,000 bonus on top of the $7,000, you don't get that $5,000. You just don't, because you agreed to the 7. Now, what you can do, and this, I think I've got this down here. Okay, here we go. My broker fee for representing you is XYZ. On the contrary, if the owner of the home you decide to purchase is offering to pay an amount above this as a buyer broker incentive, we'll negotiate that for you as a credit at your closing in your favor, So in other words, if Bob the seller is offering an extra $5,000 buyer broker bonus on top of the already agreed to 3%, then that $5,000, you're going to negotiate that in the contract to go towards buyer pay closing cost. Okay. So that is that. Let's see. I think we've got final notes. I know change is not easy. I know we'll conquer the changes for the good and continue business as normal. For listing agents, just making sure that you send that courtesy recap text, some sort of a text. You can create one super easy in Canva, or just go buy the little kit they've already put together for you. And then for selling agents, having a signed agreement is not a bad thing at the end of the day. I mean, we get signed agreements for listing agreements. Why not do them for buyers, right? So before we do any work on a listing, we have it signed, sealed, delivered. We know what we're getting paid. Same difference. So don't feel like it's a bad thing, because it's really not. I feel that, working with buyers now, you need to have some sort of a resource available, to similar to a listing presentation, you need to have some sort of a buyer presentation. Now, I have a buyer's guide marketing kit that's on my Etsy shop, and that thing is full. I mean, it is full. It's from start to finish, to where you can really provide value by giving them that guide. It's not like a traditional guide. It's full. It's a good one. Notes for selling agents, please always leave feedback. Please, 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 please provide feedback. These sellers hound listing agents for the feedback. We need to know what the feedback is. We don't care if it's good, bad, ugly, in between. It does not matter. Share the feedback for any house that you show. It is a courtesy. But not only is it a courtesy for you as a selling agent for your buyers, it's a courtesy to the seller. Okay. It's a courtesy to let them know. And it helps listing agents validate an additional reason for the value that you bring as a selling agent. So, give the feedback. It takes 2 seconds. And trust me, listing agents, we're on standby waiting for that, right? So when I represent a buyer, I'm usually providing feedback the second I leave, because I know the listing agent's waiting on it. And then that's typically screenshotted and sent right to the sellers. Okay. It helps them kind of figure out if they're in the right price point, what the house might need, all the things. Okay. And then consider using the home detail sheet to outline important features and financial details of the property with your client. Or you can go and kind of create your own. That's that little sheet there. All right, cool. So let me get my sheet back, or my page back over here. We did it. It was longer than I expected. I apologize. But look, now you know how to appropriately answer 5 buyer questions, 5 seller questions. You know some of the most important laws that or rules, new rules that you need to know when it comes to your real estate business. I hope you took a lot of notes. Again, if you want this whole printout of what we went over today, and there's some extra sheets we didn't cover, you can definitely check the link. I'll leave it below so that you can head over to the Etsy shop, grab that. But yeah, so I'm excited for the changes. It's just business as normal. We'll pivot, we'll get through it, and move right along. I hope you have the best rest of your day. Definitely hit the like if you haven't, subscribe if you haven't yet, because I've got some other really good ones planned to share with you here. So definitely hit the subscribe so you don't miss it. And I will see you soon. Have a wonderful day. Let's get out there. Let's get it.